All right, so for the last question, rather than going to the class of Daryl or Kenzie or Johnny, I wanted to ask my Instagram followers if they had questions. And if you don't follow me on Instagram, you can do that right here. And so what we did is we picked a really good question from Celestial Gypsy. Here's what she said.
So my question is, do you think the principles of fat loss change as you age in your 30s, 40s, 50s? Or do you think it's still as significant calories in, calories out?
All right, so first and foremost, Celestial Gypsy, that was a phenomenal question, so thank you for that. And the sum and substance of the question is, do the principles of fat loss change as you age? Now, before I go into the nitty gritty with this, what I want to say is I just did several podcasts recently with my clients who have lost a considerable amount of fat while going through menopause, because a lot of people say that menopause completely eliminates your ability to lose fat, which is, it's false. And if you haven't heard those podcasts, the links are in the description of this video. I think that especially if you or someone you know is going through menopause, they're gonna find them very, very helpful. Now for this question specifically, do the principles of fat loss change? No, the principles always stay the same, but that doesn't mean it doesn't get more challenging. From my experience, working with a lot of men and women, especially women in the 40s and 50s and 60s and even 70s, fat loss absolutely gets harder, gets more difficult, gets more challenging as you get older for any number of reasons, which I'll outline. But just because it gets more challenging does not mean the principles are changing. Regardless of how old you are, regardless of what gender you are, regardless of anything, calorie deficit is still absolutely 100% essential for fat loss. Regardless of anything you have going on, you need to be in a calorie deficit, and regardless of anything you have going on, it is very beneficial to keep your protein high, to keep your muscle mass high, to reduce hunger. Regardless of anything going on, strength training is gonna be very beneficial to help build and maintain muscle mass and to keep your metabolism high. So these are all the principles, really the most important one being a calorie deficit. But again, just because these are the principles doesn't mean that it doesn't get harder as you age, because in my opinion, it absolutely does get more challenging. Now, one of the things we spoke about in my podcast around menopause and fat loss were all of the changes that happen as you're going through menopause that make fat loss more difficult. For example, one of them being sleep can go to shit. And one of my clients, Kim Schlag, she's also a phenomenal coach, she told me about how when she was having hot flashes in the middle of the night, how she was maybe getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep at night. That being said, she was still able to lose fat because she made sure she was in a calorie deficit. This is one of those things where sleep, a lack of sleep, can of course impact fat loss. But a lot of times it's not because you are lacking sleep, but it's because maybe when you're lacking sleep, you end up eating and you end up going over your calories. And also because during the day, because you didn't sleep as much, you're really tired. You don't have the energy to go to the gym and get your workouts in. So it's all coming back to being in a calorie deficit, strength training, keeping your protein high. But of course, if you're not getting enough sleep, it's gonna be way more difficult to do that. The main thing that I wanna get across here is, even though it's more difficult, it does not mean that you can't do it. This is probably the most important message I can get across to anybody, regardless of your age, regardless of what's going on in your life. For example, stress, this is another one. A lot of people say that stress is going to make it harder or impossible to lose fat because your cortisol raises. That's not accurate. Of course, if you're more stressed out, you have more stuff going on in your life, you have more priorities, you have other things going on, it's gonna be harder to take the time to meal prep. It's gonna be harder to be in a calorie deficit because maybe you're really stressed out and you wanna stress eat. It's gonna be harder to get to the gym because you have so much stuff going on. But it's not that the cortisol will prevent you from losing fat, because again, as long as you're in a calorie deficit, you'll lose fat. It's all of the other factors in your life that make being in a calorie deficit harder to achieve. So the most important thing I can get across here is that even though you're getting older, even though you're more stressed out, even though you have all of these things happening, it doesn't mean it's impossible, it just means it's more challenging. And it's an important message to understand, because a lot of times as people get older and they have all these extra challenges, they just give up because someone is telling them, no, it's impossible. You're getting older. You're going through menopause. You're really stressed out. You've got a few kids. Your testosterone's going down. All of this shit. It is harder, but don't listen to anybody who tells you you just can't do it, because that person's already given up and that sucks for them, but you don't have to. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. You can still do it. And really, let me think about this for a second. What if you couldn't do it? What if it was actually impossible? You couldn't lose fat. Do you still think there's no reason to exercise? Do you still think there's no reason to focus on maintaining a healthy diet? Of course not. It's not just, oh, I can't do this anymore, so I'm just going to go the other way and just completely let myself go. There are so many other benefits. And yes, you still can do it. But that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And even if you couldn't, it's not an excuse to let yourself go. It's not an excuse to devalue yourself. It's not an excuse to just completely say, fuck it, and go the other direction. Because that's what a lot of people do. And a lot of people allow themselves to believe these lies because it's easier to do nothing than it is to do something. So if you take anything from this video and from this phenomenal question, it's that yes, you absolutely can do it. The principles always stay the same because they're the principles, they're the backbone, they're physiology, they're science. And getting older and getting busier and having a family and crazy jobs and all of this other stuff will absolutely make it harder. But don't let anybody convince you that it's impossible, because that's just not true. So with all of that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, Sorting Hat Squad is on. So if you like the video, subscribe and comment hashtag Sorting Hat Squad. You'll be entered to win a free month in my inner circle. I pick 3 people on every video to win a free month in my inner circle. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Have a wonderful day. Talk to you soon.